Dr. Harris, Dr. Harris, you want to be a nurse? But wait, don't you regret your doctorate in psychology? You wasted the last 10 years. Number one question I get asked by my students, and they find out what I'm up to in this next chapter of my life. The answer? Not exactly. That and more. Here on Second Shift Nurse Stories. Pursuing nursing, the ultimate goal of becoming a certified nurse midwife. Like I said at the outset, the number one question I get asked, the number one question I get asked by my students when they find out that I'm doing this is, so you regret your doctorate in psychology? The answer is not exactly, not really. I always say I came to psychology because I didn't want to be a lawyer because I didn't want the paperwork. And I didn't want to be a doctor because I didn't want to go to school for all that time. And so then I awkwardly chose the career that has the paperwork and the school without the money. I made a mistake somewhere. But I really like the idea of working with people, of talking to people, the idea that our habits have such an impact on the way we live and on our health. And so I set out to be a psychologist with an interest in integrated healthcare and the ways in which we could better involve mental health providers within the context of primary healthcare. And so within that, did a lot of work with health behavior change and chronic disease management and all kinds of other brief intervention type work in the primary care setting. As I was doing my training and loving life, I scored an internship at Health Point Community Health Centers in King County, Washington, and had an incredible experience. But a lot of that experience was working with family practice providers who also did obstetrics, working with families and seeing people at all different stages of life, families with individuals at all different stages. And I love working with families, but also in an area like King County, especially South King County, you see a lot of diversity. This was my first interactions with refugee patients, my first interactions with Native and Indigenous people living on reserve, and even really kind of like my first substantial caseload of geriatric patients as well. So it's different. It was different than what any of my training had been in community mental health, or even some of the specialty mental health places where I had been in practice. I also did inpatient, child and adolescent training, and this was just vastly different. And what really became clear to me in that was that there's so much swirling around people, and all of that swirling around people is what plays such a huge role in people's wellness, not just their physical wellness, but their mental wellness. And so, of course, that piques my interest in diversity. Through a practice, an internship that was showing me health disparities in real time, I became super interested in health disparities. I have been obsessed with the idea of birth for like a long time. Even on my internship, working with these family practice doctors with obstetrics and being like, oh, I'll come to the hospital. I can catch a baby. I remember laughing about the new residents coming in and saying, how are they any more qualified than me? I have sure hands. I will see the baby in. I promise. Let me catch a baby. And that just continued. So I went to some postdoctoral fellowships. Again, really interested in health disparities, really interested in working in a community where we'd be able to address those, loving working with families and being like, I hear there's a lot of babies delivered at this hospital. And I'm saying, yeah, one of our residents was or one of our fellows was administrator of the day at the hospital and caught a baby on the front steps not 2 weeks ago. And I was like, this is where I belong. This is where I belong. I could catch a baby on the hospital's front steps. Just for the off chance that that might happen again, and I might be a part of it, this is the place for me. That didn't happen. And that placement didn't work out, and that's okay. I came back to Missouri State, and that's how I got into more of the academic pursuit. I worked for 1 year in the college counseling center and then came over and really started my academic career as a psychology instructor. I think I was dipping my toe in like what would it mean to make academia like my full-time career. So of course I start considering lines of research and the things that I'm interested in, and here we are still back at health disparities. But where does this really kick into like the first stages where I'm like, man, I could see myself going a new way. I could see myself doing something different. And that really was with my own pregnancy. So I got pregnant in 2019. Again, like this idea of like birth and whatever had been so interesting to me. But when my own kiddo was born, I remember thinking, I love my OB. I have an unhealthy obsession with him. And I'm sure this will not be the first time I mention him on my channel. But my OB is a white man. I live in a predominantly white area, was served by an all-white birthing team. And when my kid was born, we were the only Black people in the room. And I remember feeling so sad about that, feeling just so upset that that was our experience and wanting to do something about it. And that kind of drove me to action. That's when I became a doula. So I started doing more research, more education, more continuing education. I became trained in childbirth education through Lamaze and a bunch of different things, just hungry for more knowledge about how to help people, and saying that here in my predominantly white town, if I could be somebody who supported Black birthing families, then I'd be somebody who was making a difference. So I was hungry for knowledge. So things like doula trainings, childbirth education trainings, evidence-based birth, peer breastfeeding support, lactation counselor, just anything I get my hands on. But here I am also working at the university, trying to drive my career forward. And so it's like, oh, well, what would be interesting would be if I started to try to do some research in this area. And again, just discovering that, like, not only, yes, does the evidence support that duels make a difference, but also that Black members of the birth team make a difference. When I became a doula, I said, oh, well, I I only was able to do it because it was something that happened during COVID. And I was able to do it because it was all online. And during that COVID time at home and whatnot, it was like, okay, well, what will we do? What could I do? What should I do now? What should I give to myself that I would never be able to do, but I can do now because everything's online? So that's how I became a doula. 9 years into my career at the university, you know, not unhappy. I like my job. I think I'm good at it. I like teaching. I wrote a textbook a couple of years ago, and I've enjoyed using that, seeing it come to life, seeing my students use it, how it's enhanced the ways I teach my class. I I knew like I'm kind of at my limit. Not because I couldn't do the thing, and not because I couldn't do tenure track academia, but more so like because I don't want to. And I wish it made more sense to be an instructor forever. I wish that paid the bills. It doesn't really. So again, turning 40 also has a big part to play in all of this. Because now I'm 40 and I'm just kind of plugging along as an instructor. And that's lame. In my university, there's a promotion to senior instructor, and then that's it. So you either find a tenure track job or be a senior instructor for the rest of your life. So I started to sit back and say, well, what could I do? Asking myself the same question. What makes sense for my career and where it's at? What makes sense for the resources I have at my fingertips right now? Like, what can I do? And I work at a university where tuition is free, and I could take so many credits a year for free. And I was like, oh, well, this is it. This is my moment. It literally, from the moment that I was like, oh, I know, I'll take some classes, I'll go to nursing school. I had it all mapped out like overnight. It was wild. It came together really fast. I was registered for classes like the next day. They didn't start for a couple of weeks, but like I was registered. I was in it. Like I was like, oh yeah, of course, like, this makes sense. It was strange though, because I didn't know what it would be like to tell people. I've been doing this thing for a while. I've been plugging along at the university. I didn't know what people would think. And for those closest to me who I have really told, it's been interesting how they agree with me too. Of like, this is just like the next phase of your career. This is what your career has been building to. So rewind all of that back to say, do I regret my doctorate in psychology? And the answer is not at all. Not one bit. Without it, I wouldn't have found this passion. And now I get to bring all of that with me. And that's always informed how I interact with community. I'm really interested in research still, just on like more of a local scale. Our program adopts a local clinical scientist model of training, and this idea that psychologists are excellent people to understand the scope of the problem in our own communities and use our knowledge of science and methodology to create data-driven, data-supported efforts for advocacy in our local communities. And so I value that and see that as always being a part of whatever comes next for me. But also, like, here we are still, like, wanting to do more, wanting to go back into the community. I don't want to do that as a therapist. Any practice I would set up would definitely be perinatal focused, and I don't want to sit around and listen to stories of people like me, or stories from people who look like me saying, I need to unpack all of my birth trauma. I want to be in the room. I want to be in the room making a difference. I want to do that at a high level. And again, this is for me just feels like the next growth and iteration of my career. So no, I don't regret my doctorate in psychology. I don't regret the last bunch of years. I'm not running away from it. I'm trying to find smooth transition in a way that makes sense for me. And of course, doesn't do anyone dirty at my institution and or puts me in strange situations financially. Like, I'm trying to do it smart. And I hope that people really will understand that, yes, if I had been in different circumstances, this might not have come along, but here I am. And I have an opportunity to find a cheap way into a passion area of mine, into growth in a passion area of mine. And that's very exciting. So, no regrets. I wouldn't have found this niche or this passion area without my studies and travels in psychology. And I do still think that the evidence-based practice I learned, the people skills that I learned, I think all of that just makes me better at doing the thing. And of course, all my time spent in education supports me in doing the thing, which is teaching people more about what is evidence-based for their birth, teaching people to trust themselves and find the confidence in themselves, to be involved members of their healthcare team, involved members of their birthing team, not just somebody who shows up and is told what to do. So I am really glad for all of that. One thing I haven't said that I will say is that I think also as I've grown in psychology, and of course I teach diversity and I've traveled through the ideas of decolonizing our practice and what that means and how all of that looks, that ancestral roots have become really important to me. Ancestral practice, kind of understanding what that is, what those were, understanding communal practice better. And through that, I've really become interested in, of course, my own ancestry. And my own ancestor was a grand midwife. So from that space as well, do I feel like, oh, this is just a natural progression yet again, to return something to my ancestral line. And that's all of the wisdom passed on by our ancestors to us for how to take care of the people who look like us, how to take care of our communities. The legacy of the grand midwives is really important to me. And I would be wrong to not take the time to give myself back to that ancestry, and to try and grab some of that knowledge back, especially in these times, and prepare myself again to serve to serve my community. So I'm always really excited about that. And you may think that's silly, but I gotta tell you, it's probably the best thing. So that's my story. Sticking to it and making progress on this journey. Slowly. More to come about that in future episodes, so make sure to subscribe, stay tuned, and be well. Talk to you later.